Jon Velie, CEO of OnlineVisas, and welcome to Trump Immigration, the plan for the 2020 election. It's mid-May, and we are 6 months out of the election for President of the United States. COVID-19 has ravaged the country, over 1.3 million cases and over 80,000 deaths. The president has a massive problem. He has issues with 1.5% unemployment, a historical high, over 20 million jobs lost in April alone, and 33 million people have filed for unemployment. He's in a debate with his top doctors over reopening the country too soon and facing a second wave of COVID-19 cases that may be even larger. And keeping it closed is equally dire to his goal of becoming president of the United States again. Trump's critics say his leadership has been lacking in firing his pandemic response team around the globe and calling it a hoax instead of stocking up on tests and equipment and preparing for the virus to hit the U.S. shores. He and his supporters claim he did a great job in locking down the borders from China initially and adding Iran, Europe, the UK. The political strategy has been to blame China for the virus and Europe for its ineptness in containing it. And it's with this backdrop that Trump immigration plan for the 2020 election appears to be coming into focus, right? So we're going to look at 5 things to provide a roadmap on how President Trump will use immigration as a political tool in his campaign for re-election. Number 1, executive orders. In the proclamation 9994 of March 13th, 2020, he declared that COVID-19 outbreak in the United States constituted a national emergency beginning March 1st, 2020. All right, no problem there. He then begins the series of travel bans. Canada and Europe's borders were closed starting March 21st. They are slated to be open in just a few days, but it looks like that will be extended. There are also bans from China, Iran, Europe, which is the Schengen region, numerous European countries. Those were initial, and then a few days later included Great Britain and Ireland. All right. So he then came up with a proclamation for suspending entry of immigrants who presented a risk to the U.S. labor market during the economic recovery following the COVID-19 outbreak, and he did that on April 22nd. This proclamation is what we think will be the tool of what he will use going forward. So what did that proclamation do, and how did we get there? So what happened is on a Tuesday, we see a tweet from the president saying he's going to prohibit immigration into the United States. All right, that sounds like a global thing, right? If you looked at the law, what he could do was pretty limited with that. But the way he said it seemed like this overall thing. The next day, he has a televised conference in which he talks about what he's going to do. And on a following day, which was the 22nd, he came out with the proclamation. So what did this proclamation do? Well, it didn't do very much, to be honest. It limited the filing of green card applications for certain types of business visas. It prohibited the EB-1, the extraordinary ability, the outstanding researcher, and the multinational executives. It prohibited the EB-2 except for national interest waivers. It prohibited the EB-3, that's sort of like the perm process for both skilled and educated workers. Certain EB-4s, there's some exceptions to that, usually some governmental type of diplomats, things like that can come in, and it did not prohibit the EB-5. However, all those prohibitions for those green cards were only for filing outside the United States. It did not stop any immigrants from filing or any proposed immigrants, that's green card folks, from filing their green card applications inside the United States at all. It also prohibited the filing of family-based immigration. They often call this chain migration. This has been a big sore spot for the Trump administration, or I shouldn't say a sore spot as much as where he's focused on chain migration, even though his wife filed chain migration visas for her parents. That's Melania Trump's parents. However, you could still file green card applications outside the country if it was for marriage to a U.S. citizen. So it stopped these other things. Any of those green card applications could still be filed inside the United States. And what it didn't do was non-immigrant visas. Okay, now why didn't it do that? So from an immigration lawyer's perspective and looking at how a official can do something, they have to have the authority to do it. So the president of the United States could use this national emergency to stop immigration from outside the United States. Well, immigration's a term of art. it doesn't mean any foreigner. It means the filing of a green card application. And outside the United States specifically does not mean inside the United States. So we just abided by the law. However, that created, more of a political dilemma. So what's the political dilemma right now? Well, as we said, the politics of this is, how does the Trump administration deflect that they didn't handle the COVID virus well? They blame China, right? That's really what that is done. And his base has really, really followed that. So what's he going to do going forward? Well, what was also in this proclamation was a very interesting nugget. It said in 30 days after that filing, which would be May 23rd, 2020, 3 agencies would then come to the president and say, how did the impact of non-immigrant visas? Now, non-immigrant visas are not immigrant visas, right? So they precluded really from his law, are all of the temporary work visas, all right? These are the merit-based visas. These are temporary guest worker programs. They come in names like H-1B, H-2B, J-1, F-1 for student visas. There's a laundry list of them. O1 for extraordinary ability, P1 for athletes, L1 for multinational executives, E1 and E2 for treaty traders and treaty investors. There's about 30 of these. All right, so those weren't added, but at the 30-day, these agencies are going to come to the United States and see what it means. So what happened after that? Well, we saw about a week ago that a number of congressional leaders, mostly Republicans, came to the president with a laundry list of things they would like to make tougher, right? So it is sticking with his political base to do this. And it makes sense, really, from a political perspective, right? That there are so many people out of work, so much unemployment, that having foreign workers come in the United States to take jobs from Americans is a really good way to shape an issue for the president going forward, right? And so that's what he's trying to do. So what we really want to see is what happens on these 30 days. What I think we'll see is that the executive order is going to be a political tool for the president on a 30 or 60-day rolling window to make these announcements, to protect American workers, to scare them against immigrants taking their jobs, even if we really need them. Right? Even if we really need them. And we do. We have a negative unemployment rate in certain types of industries, despite all of this, if you kind of remove the COVID virus scenario. The tech industry really needs this, needs techies to come in. We have students on student visas with OPT. We need those folks to continue to do their jobs. Lots of these things are still at play, and we have a need for them in our economy, right? For our economy to rebound, we need our companies to be strong. Despite this, it's a political play. All right, so here's what you need to watch out for. The second impact, besides the executive orders, the second thing to think about when you're watching the Trump immigration plan for 2020 is its impact on swing states. All right, what does Michigan think about this? What does Pennsylvania think about this? What does Florida think about this? What does Texas think about this? What are the states that are in play, and how will these executive orders change the dynamic of the Trump's approval rating and looking at the polls on who's going to be reelected, or if he's going to be reelected, or if it's going to swing towards Joe Biden? So look at the impact on swing states while we're looking at these 30 to 60 day potential proclamations going into 6 months towards the election. The next thing, what visas will be impacted? Well, we already know that green cards for most employment-related visas, permanent visas, filed outside the United States have been impacted, and other than marriage to American citizens, all family-based, meaning that parents of U.S. citizens, brothers, sisters of U.S. citizens, those visas outside the United States are on hold. So those that we know have been impacted. All right, so the big question is, what visas might be impacted? This is really the ball game, folks. So when the non-immigrant visas were not included, it may not have been limited to that the president didn't have the authority to do that, right? It may have been by massive lobbying from U.S. companies saying you cannot kill us right now. We need these people to do these jobs. We're trying to survive during an economic downturn, right? We don't know what's going to happen. We need our best people. You can't tell us we can't have them. And that lobbying might have done it. Now, so this is the president trying to weigh those things, right? Do we need to help these companies survive during this? Or do I need to go towards my political base to really fuel them against immigration? We've seen his anti-immigration rhetoric. This is not surprising. This plays right into it. In addition to that, we've seen the use of the pandemic be used to strengthen the restrictions on immigration. This has been part of the Miller plan that Stephen Miller has utilized since his first days when he was paired up with Bannon in trying to create this scenario. In addition to the Miller plan, look to people like Grassley. Chuck Grassley out of Iowa, the senator, has had a negative immigration bent against the EB-5 green card, the L-1, and the H-1B since he started introducing legislation against the H-1B and L-1 starting in 2010. He had a piece of legislation to revise those visas for 7 years until Donald Trump became president. And Donald Trump then started hiring his chiefs of staff to sit in those positions and start implementing more difficult policies in the merit-based immigration things. Now, the L1 is for intercompany transferees. That's for international companies to be able to move their executives and managers and specialized workers to their U.S. offices. These are really, really important. All right. So Grassley is against those things. However, that doesn't mean that those visas will be impacted. The H-1B is really the rubber, right? This is the one that we could see go either way on that, and we really hope that it doesn't as an immigration attorney. The L-1, I think, is safe, right? International companies need to be able to conduct international business in the United States. It would really be a bad idea to that. Now, the EB-5 was exempted from the original proclamation, so it would be very difficult to put it into a new one, I think, politically. And the EB-5 is a really good idea. So as the United States is borrowing money from foreign banks, foreign-owned banks, the EB-5 is an investment into U.S. operations at $1.8 million or $900,000 with the requirement of creating 10 jobs for Americans. Very, very important to have that come and that pushing back. You're going to see some leaders of companies, immigrants of companies saying, we're giving back to America. We want to invest in America. We want to create jobs in America, right? We want to get building going in America. So the EB-5 is very good for that. So we should probably see that happen. And then what visas won't be impacted? So we don't think the L will be. We don't think the E1 for treaty traders or the E2 for treaty investors will be, and probably not the J1. Well, why not the J1? Well, we saw some of the political players that are really using the J1 say exempt us. And this is really what politics is all about. Carve out things that mean something for you, let some other things going. This is Jon Velie. These are 5 things to look out for in the Trump immigration plan for the 2020 election. Take care. Jon Velie, CEO of OnlineVisas. Please subscribe. Turn on your alerts if you want to hear more about this. If you're watching us on YouTube, share this and like it. We really appreciate you. See you next time.